start our lesson by going into Safari, go into the calendar and click on the lesson instructions and see the ... That means there's more. And there's 2 PowerPoints here. We're going to start with the first one, and it's actually in a PPTX form, so it's in an actual PowerPoint form. So it's going to load it into the Downloads folder. And you want to go open that by double-clicking on it in the Downloads folder. And the reason I left it in a PowerPoint form rather than as a PDF is I want you to see a little bit more about what PowerPoints look like, because we're going to be learning those next. And so this is an open PowerPoint, and it is it's a slideshow. That's what they basically call a slideshow. There's different programs that create slideshows. Microsoft's program is called PowerPoint. So let's go here to slideshow, and we're going to click from the start. Now, what I want you to see also while we're looking at this PowerPoint is the animations and the transitions, how words pop into the screen. Because a lot of kids like to create those and they have a lot of fun with them, but you can see also how they become annoying and how they have to be consistent. So I want you to see that while we're going through this. So what this PowerPoint is about is we're starting to look at news sources like the LA Times, and we're doing assignments that are going to be related to looking up the news. And this is very important in this day and age. And so we have to understand what are called reliable sources versus unreliable sources. Reliable meaning that they're creditable, that they're accurate, that they're true, that they're not lying to us, they're not fake. And there's so much information on the internet, and a lot of it is not good information, and so you can't rely on it. And you don't want to use unreliable sources in your assignments. So we're going to evaluate the good versus the bad sources. So I hit the return key to move between the slides. Now you also might want to take notes on this, because we are going to have a test in the next week or so over reliable sources. Your notes, the notes are required unless you're a leader, and you have to you can decide for yourself what you want. You can have just copy the whole PowerPoint. You might want to even do that before you start watching the video, and then add other notes to it, or you can just copy down what you think is important. But you are going to have a quiz over this, so keep that in mind as you go through it. And if you want to go at your slow pace and take notes while you're at it, that's what this is for. So let's get started. Don't trust everything you read. The internet has a lot of information, as I said before. There's so many websites on the internet, and how do we know which ones are true and which ones are false? Fact or opinion? So a reliable source is a source that can be verified, that there's evidence, that there's documentation, that it's not just something somebody made up without any claim to it. When anyone can create a website, so that's why anybody can just say anything, and it means nothing. So how do we know which sources are credible, accurate, and current? Notice all the little animations and transitions. So we have the rule of 4 W's. You've probably heard of these before, but there's usually 5. We're doing 4. Who, what, where, and when. Who wrote the page? What is the purpose of the site? Where did it come from? When was it created and last updated? So let's look at who first. Who is the authority? Who is putting this information out? That's your first question, is when you read and cite on the website. Who? Who is this? Who's saying this? Is this a personal page, just an individual doing it by themselves? Or is it part of a site belonging to a major institution or group? If it's a lot of people putting this information out as a group, that's going to give it a little bit more credibility, because people tend to call each other out. The more people involved in an act, the more ethical, the more responsible that act is going to be. So look for words and phrases as about us, who am I, facts, which are frequently asked questions. That's what that means. Company information, profiles, our staff. So look for a link like that where you can read about it and see who is it? Who is this that's putting this out? Is it just one name? Is it many names? And can they be contacted? Can you click on a link and send them an email? Is there a phone number? Is there an address? If there's nothing like that, that's your first clue to be suspicious. Check the URL domains, the URL addresses. So that's a clue. You're familiar with .com and .net, but there are some that are very reliable. EDU, which is an educational site, GOV, which is a government site, MIL is a military site, or ORG is an organization. Or the org one, .org, anybody can create a .org one too. So that's just not as reliable as the other three. And also note at the S in the address, HTTPS. If there's an S in it, it means the site is secured, and it has an SLS certificate. That's S stands for secure. So this means that it is the company's gone through a process of validation. So they're going to be much more of a reliable source because they've gone through a process. They've signed up to do that, and they've been checked out, and that means they're pretty much reliable. And so look for personal domains. .me or .aol. These are just individuals who've created a website linking it to their personal email account, and these are going to be just individuals. They're not going to be groups or organizations or anything that is necessarily reliable. Rarely is something .aol or .me going to be reliable. Now, .com and .net are the two most common URL addresses at the end, but they can be reliable and they can be not reliable. It just depends. So you have to go through the process of asking all the other questions on those. There's some symbols you can look for, or words that you can look for in the URL down here, that if you see those, that's going to be a red flag for you to go, maybe I should not trust this website. So then the next question is what? What is the purpose or motive of the site? Is it there to inform or educate you? Is it to advertise to you or sell you something? If that's their agenda, they just want to sell you something, then maybe they're not as reliable. The information could be accurate, but what are they trying to do? Or maybe they're just trying to persuade you. Maybe it's propaganda, trying to convince you to vote for somebody or to believe something that's not true. We're going to do a whole other lesson on propaganda and fake news. You've probably been hearing about fake news a lot, and it's a bigger issue now after the presidential election. So we're going to be doing a whole other presentation on fake news and propaganda. Maybe the purpose of the website is to entertain. Now, there's a lot of websites out there to entertain. They're not necessarily bad. They're just not there. They're not to be used as sources for information to do an assignment on, because that's a totally different purpose, to entertain. Some of these websites are satirical or parody, or they call them spoof news. The Onion is one of the most prominent, most biggest ones, and one of the first ones. The Onion was actually a printed newspaper for a while and is now just online only. Now you can click on the link and follow and look at it. But The Onion is a newspaper with lots of people who contribute to it. You look at it, let's go to it. You look at it and you'll see that it looks like a newspaper. It even says America's finest news source, has lots of stories. It's going to have many authors. This looks like a reliable source, but it's not. Totally not. So it's just one of those you have to be aware of. If you scroll down to somewhere on the bottom, I think it says this is parody. The Onion is not intended for readers under the ages of 18. Well, there you go. I don't know where it says it. I don't go to The Onion. But somewhere in here you'll find that it's clearly all parody. And you often will know that when you read the stories and you're going, wait, this is crazy. This is stupid. This can't be true. It's not. That's why. So anyway, keep that in mind. All right, let's go back to where we were. All right, so those are the 4 purposes. So keep those purposes in mind: to advertise or sell, persuade, to inform or educate, and to entertain. Does the language and the tone seem unbiased and free of emotion? So is it very serious, very, just here to tell you the facts and tell you the facts only, or is it very full of emotion and you have to believe this, and of course this is true? There's that strong emotion is going to tell you that somebody's trying to talk you into something. They're trying to persuade you into something, and they're very passionate about it because they have an investment in you believing them. So, if somebody's just trying to inform you or educate you, or like, take it or leave it, this is what I'm telling you, I'm just telling you the facts. Don't kill the messenger, as an old expression. And so they're not going to be so emotionally caught up into it. If you watch the news, you'll see that news reporters rarely give emotion. They try to avoid that. It's very unpersonal or professional and journalistic, and it does make them look not believable. Another thing to look for is, does it have grammar and spelling errors? If this was a serious news organization, serious news, they would have somebody who checked the grammar and the spelling and make sure that it was correct. If you see a lot of these errors, you're going to go, who is this? One person by themselves putting this together, and they don't have the resources or the time to go through and check the spelling. And if they're in a hurry to persuade you, if they're propaganda, then they're not going to take the time to do it. So that's a clue. Can the facts or statistics be verified? If they quote something, they say a fact, go look it up somewhere else. Go to the source that would be the closest to it and see if it's true. They're quoting crime statistics. Go to a website for the courthouses or the police and look up the statistics that they're saying and see, are they true? There have been lots of stuff in the news of late coming out of the president's office that have been flat out not true. And it's a disturbing problem that we have right now in our country. So these are things that you have to keep in mind. Let's go to the next slide. Fancy animations. All right. Where is the next W? Does the site have citations of the original sources? If it is not original research. So if this is not their own, somebody hasn't done their own research and they're quoting somebody else's research, then they need to cite that research. There needs to be references. Whose research is? When was it done? Where's the link? You got to give credit to where credit is due. If somebody else has come up and they did all this research and they spent months doing all this, then you need to give credit to them. Does the author's experience really qualify him or her as an expert? So this person has been a businessman all their lives, buying and selling products. Now suddenly they're talking about the climate of the planet and the future of the natural resources available to us to exist as a planet. They've been a businessman. Do they know what they're talking about? How much science have they been involved in when they've been worried about buying and selling products? So you have to maybe they have been selling products that have been related to the natural resources. Maybe the products they sell have get them out into the environment, and they talk to environmentalists all the time. So maybe they do have some experience that is reasonable and relates to what they're talking about. But it's a good chance they don't. So you have to ask those questions. Is anyone else or another source saying the same thing? This is big. This is a big thing. Often I'll hear on the internet, oh, some celebrity. I remember one time somebody said Betty White had died. And I'm like, Betty White died? And then you go and you jump out of that website and go to other websites and you Google Betty White's death, and nobody else is talking about it. Nobody. The LA Times is not talking about it. Time Magazine, NBC News, they're not talking about it. So I'm like, none of these sources are saying Betty White died. If Betty White had died, they would all be talking about it. So, is another source saying the same thing? How many sources? So, if only one source is saying it, probably not true. 2 or 3 are saying it, it's more likely, but you need to really check those resources. Who are those resources? Are they connected in any way? Are any of them major resources, which we'll talk more about later? So it's also about how many. But if it's the only one saying it, it's probably not true. Where are any advertisers coming from? So are the advertisers big advertisers? Are they products that you've heard of? Are they some skeptical, little questionable products that, so somebody just trying to sell me some fake product, some cream for my acne on my face that's not really going to do anything but just be on my face? So look and see what kind of advertisers. Do the advertisers look legit or not? So thin ice. When was this information? That's our fourth W. I think is that the fourth one. When was this information created or published? How old is it? It could have been reliable information 10 years ago, but it's not reliable anymore. Things have changed. So that's another thing you need to look at. When was it last updated or revised? So if they're talking about healthcare and the status of healthcare in this country, in the news, this source is 10 years old, yeah, it's going to be way out of date, and it's not going to be considered reliable anymore. It was at one time reliable, but it's no longer. And maybe they have updated, maybe they've created a new website somewhere else that is more updated, so you need to look for that. Has the author of the page stopped maintaining it? So if the author has given up on this website and hasn't updated in a while, then again, it's old information. Are all the links still functional? If you click on the links, do they take you where they're supposed to go, or do you get those little error messages? Again, the more of these mistakes you see, bad links, no updates in a while, then this source is old. Now, this last question, did this source exist prior to the internet? This is another huge question, huge. So if you're taking notes, gotta write that one down. Did this source exist prior to the internet? I'm going to show you the next slideshow after this is all about this. Which sources existed prior to the internet? Because the rule of thumb is if the source existed before the internet, it's probably reliable. Because before the internet came along, there wasn't a lot of this deceiving information, deliberately deceptive information, false information. People couldn't just create media easily as they do with the internet. So it was a lot more effort, a lot more work. It took money, it took people. And so anything prior to the internet, if it was established before the internet came along, then it's most likely going to be a reliable source. So we're going to go through that and look at what sources existed before the internet. That'll be the next slideshow. So, what about Wikipedia? Wikipedia, you probably checked this website out. It's a good website. I'm not going to badmouth it. There's a lot of good information on Wikipedia. But anyone in the world can update Wikipedia. You can create an account. You can go in there and say, change this information, type something there, and put it in there. And the people at Wikipedia will then check it out and verify the information. And if they find it uncreditable, they may delete it. If they find it, they don't know whether it's creditable, they may leave it. So you don't always know. Wikipedia has become kind of this source of the place where everybody goes to put information, and maybe they're well intended, but it's not accurate. People's memories can fail them. Maybe they remember something and it wasn't accurate. But it can be a good starting place. When you're doing a project or research and you want to find sources, you can go to Wikipedia as a starting place. It can lead you. If you look at the bottom of the Wikipedia page, there's going to be a reference section. And this is where people put their sources. They say this in their Wikipedia page, and then they reference where they found it. So the sources are the good places to start. And it can also help you remember something you already know. Say you saw something on television and you remember it, and you can't remember all the facts, but you remember something about it, and you can go there and look it up, and oh, yeah, there it is. Wikipedia is verifying what my own memory serves me. So it can help. It can help you remember things. And then you take that memory and then you go somewhere else and research it. So sometimes Wikipedia is the only source on something because it has a lot more information than most, than maybe found elsewhere. It is huge. Now, Wikipedia is striving constantly to be more accurate. It is a serious organization with good intentions. You need to be skeptical, but don't rule it completely out. But you cannot list it in a bibliography. Teachers will not allow you to list Wikipedia as a source by itself. So it's a good place to hang out, get information, get some notes, and maybe help you determine what you want to talk about in your presentation. But it's not the place that you cite for your sources of information. So let's review. Clues to look for: bad signs of a website, strange URL addresses, no dates on the websites, no advertisers at all. There's no advertisers at all. They can't. How big of an organization are they? How legitimate are they? If they don't need money to support their website, what's their motive? No pictures? No pictures at all? Really? You're telling me about things that are happening in the world and you don't have the resources to go take pictures of it? Then you're a small-time operation with not a lot of money. Reliable sources need money. They have advertisers, and the advertisers help pay for their expenses, and the expenses are photographers to go take pictures, reporters to go get the stories, and fact checkers to check the facts. And another, obviously, remember bad grammar or spelling. These are clues that will jump out at you. Don't forget, the internet's not your only source. You can go to print sources, newspapers, magazines, and there are databases that you can access through your library. And ask your librarian for other sources. The internet is not the only source for materials. Now, when you do a PowerPoint and you're using pictures in your PowerPoint, you need to source your images. This is giving credit to where you got your images. If you're taking the images from the internet, you need to give credit to the people that you borrowed them from. This is required when you are doing projects. Now, if you're going to use the images for commercial purposes, you're going to be selling something with it, then you have to pay them for the rights to use their image. But when it's just for informational purposes and education, as long as you cite them, as long as you reference them, it's good. And so when you use information, you want to cite your sources. In this type of PowerPoint, most of what has this in this PowerPoint, most of what was used from sources was images. The rest of it was just information that the librarian, Miss Abaji, and myself have put together based on our own experience and our own knowledge, and just common knowledge that we teachers know. So we didn't really look up information. We just organized it. But we did use pictures from other sources, so that's why we have an image sources cited at the end, giving credit to the pictures. Now, a lot of pictures, if they're in Microsoft Bing clip art, you can use them without having to reference them, and it's a law called the Creative Commons law. So I list it first as the first source that you're using clip art from Bing per Creative Commons, and that's just to cover your bases. All right, that's it for our first presentation, our first slideshow on this topic, and I hope you took some decent notes.